Enter the Stars. And we saw this in 99 Red Balloons, bombs dropping, balloons. We saw this in Red Dawn in the same year, 1984, 33 years ago. We saw this in Visitors in 1984, where the balloons went up and dropped the red dust to rid the planet of the aliens. And we saw it in Metallica's 2008 music video, All Nightmare Long, in which balloons came over the United States and dropped the plague. And now we're seeing it in a board game. Pandemic. Firebombs. Now, for those that don't know, that are late to the show, NASA released 50 balloons with the Painobacillus bacteria into the stratosphere on the date of the eclipse, while there was record attendance at worldwide festivals. Here are the balloons. There's the eclipse. And I told you that the jet stream would carry those spores into and across the United States. Here's the jet stream card. Here's the government collapse card, which is what a pandemic would do. The role of the event card game that you just saw, Contagion, is to put the player in the role of the diseases. And the object of the game is to eradicate the human race by spreading infections. Tropical storms cause mass flooding. Develop incubation mutation using one less card. Hurricane Harvey. Casey, you're making all this up. The spores that they launched on these balloons up into the stratosphere are harmless, and nothing's going to happen, and it's a completely safe experiment, and everything's fine, nothing to see or move along. Well, let's look at their studies. Astrobiology. Stratosphere conditions inactivate bacterial endospores from a Mars spacecraft assembly facility. Let's see what they have to say as to what happens when you launch a spore into the upper atmosphere. Now, we've already discussed how these spores, when put in close contact with other spores, can mutate. Well, a strange thing happens when you launch these spores up into the upper atmosphere. They also mutate. It says here, while variants were relatively uncommon in our sample, variant meaning a mutation, base pair substitutions in 3 coding regions associated with bacterial sporulation and metabolism do warrant further investigation. Selective pressures in Earth's upper atmosphere in transit to Mars or on the surface of the red planet could feasibly establish non-lethal mutations, which means basically a mutation that survives, the upper atmosphere, that alter bacterial gene pools deposited in new environments. Functional gene changes that result in heightened B. pumilis, this was the actual bacteria that they launched. Resilience, we're not testing this study, but comparative blah, 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 blah. Previous research has shown that UVC resistance doubled in B. pumilus spores exposed to the space environment for 18 months. Induced mutations to rifampicin resistance and sporulation deficiency were also observed. So these spores mutated. And it says, while our study focused on the forward contamination of Mars, because they're basically using Earth's atmosphere as kind of an analog environment for Mars. In other words, they're trying to recreate the environment on Mars by sending stuff in our upper atmosphere. It says, even though that their study was focused on that, Earth's stratosphere also provides opportunities for multicellular biological investigations focusing on the destructive effects of ionizing radiation. In other words, how things are mutated. Here it is. The study proves it, it shows it, it talks about it, that these things mutated. With relatively few spores that survived the stratosphere, we performed a resequencing analysis and identified 3 single nucleotide polymorphism. A polymorphism is a mutation compared to unexposed controls. It is therefore plausible that bacteria enduring radiation-rich environments may be pushed in evolutionary consequential directions, meaning mutate. There is a clear danger here, clear and present. They actually found bacteria in the upper stratosphere. The presence of viable bacteria in air sampled from the stratosphere at a height of 41 kilometers has been previously reported. Subsequently, 2 bacteria and fungus cultured from the samples. These reports show that living organisms occur at a height of 41 kilometers, well above the tropopause. Electron microscope studies have also provided tentative evidence for the presence of bacteria at a height of 25 kilometers. There are microorganisms up there. They have no idea how they're going to react with anything they're sending up there. We've already seen mutations occur when 2 bacteria are put in proximity to one another and exposed to ultraviolet light. So we have 2 ways that this bacteria can mutate. In both of these studies, these bacteria were sent up in balloons, just as NASA sent up balloons during the eclipse. And I believe they were looking to find variants, polymorphisms, mutations of these little-known bacteria to see what they will do, possibly to weaponize them. We'll be keeping a close eye on this. Take care and be safe, you guys.